What's up, viewers, subscribers, and agents alike? This your boy Enlightened Luciferian Prince coming at y'all once again. In this video, I basically want to explain how law enforcement has been basically misinformed by the establishment to basically govern and control and protect their sole interests, which is basically taking property and estates and taxes from the actual people. Now, this comes from the Sovereign Citizen Awareness Training. You can find it online. It says it's for official government use only. Obviously, this is a dossier that is basically submitted to different police departments in regards to people's stances and how they are basically viewed in the eyes of government. But as I said in my previous video, it has nothing to do specifically with how you assert your legal rights because, as I said before, they're only operating under the guise of a pirating police force. Now, in the content, it talks about the overview of the movement, common beliefs. You have what's called sovereign citizens, and then you have what's called a Moorish nation. Now, the duplicity of it is that they want to try to associate it with white supremacy when it says sovereign citizens, and then they want to say it has to deal with Moorish nations when it deals with basically melanated people asserting the same rights according to their same construct. So what they're trying to do is trying to intermingle both of them together to make it seem as if this is all one amalgamation of the same ideology, and it's not. We're going to further indicators, interactions, and the reporting. Sovereign citizens are defined by governmental law as they reject U.S. citizenship and outside of laws and regulations. That's totally impossible because you can't be a sovereign and a citizen at the same time. But then they may call themselves governmental use. That's what it says in the documentation. State citizen, freemen, preamble citizens, non-resident aliens, constitutionalists, and indigenous Americans. Oh, that's not an amalgamation or a grouping of all these entities, but let's let them be further indoctrinated. Here it goes for all you Moors, all you people call yourself Moorish, so forth. Moors, Moorish, or Murish. Add Ali, El, Day, Bay, and or Al to the last name. American foreign national or diplomat of the Moorish American national government of the Washita Nation. Basically, they're trying to particularly try to mock and deride you. Even though those who have done their actual research are proven to be basically non-fallacious and basically say, well, I know by my science that what I can prove to research that y'all are frauds. But they want to go to war because now it's not a war of literal arms, it's a war of ideology. Sovereign citizens, this is for the counterpart. Power of the county, which is known commonly as Posse Comitatus. Original followers, anti-government militia. That's what they say. For all you white supremacists that are out there watching these videos, this is how they label you. Anti-government militia, white supremacists, and other radical groups. Then they often put a picture of Timothy McVeigh and what's his name, Mr. Nichols, right next to each other to try to associate with you. The goal to restore the republic. That's what they say your label is. Sovereign citizens' common belief. Now this is for the counterpart. Belief in common law, which is the Creator's law. Well studied in history and conspiracy theories. Assert principles of founding documents. This is what they're saying for the opposite side. Assert principles of founding document, Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, U.S. Constitution. Now, sovereign citizens, this is for the counterpart, not for the Moors, this is for the counterpart. The federal government operates as a corporation. Reject authority of government and officials. Amendments, laws, and regulations are illegitimate. State citizenship, not U.S. citizenship. Now, they have a book or a publication that they actually dissert amongst their like. They basically give this documentation out and say particularly that this book is called In the Fed. If you ever have one down PDF, you'll find yourself down bad. Another video that they actually try to give them to train is what you've probably seen on YouTube, also known as Meet Your Straw Man. Now, this is Sovereign Citizen's definition of straw man. Straw man is a legal fiction of a person. And the beautiful part is if you actually read this publication that was actually given to these dumb wits we call law enforcement, if you understand that they even published this from the actual state of Illinois, it says straw man, and it's not even synonymous with actually finding it in a legal dictionary. Little do they know they are being superimposed with a certain belief pattern to basically make them look for something that's not there because it's incorrectly spelled. So that's not even something they can find themselves because most of them actually have GEDs or basic high school education to be employed. But that's neither here nor there. Straw man, by legal definition, actually defined and found, means of a person by definition, which means corporation, not natural person, according to the distinguishment by law. Anyone can become free from licenses, registrations, social security, taxes, laws and regulations, federal, state, and local government authority. That's not the truth, because if you do harm to somebody or someone's property, you're liable. If I employ myself to basically contract my energy by saying I wish to be employed, then that's not saying I'm exempt from the law. I have to hold the law to its standard by saying you can't tax something you didn't actually accrue. That's not saying that you're exempt from state law. That's a fallacy. And that's the way that they try to paint the picture to make it seem like you try to evade what is quote unquote called justice. Just is man's law. So basically, by their particularity of how they define the law, they want to specify how you have to obligate yourself to it. And notice what I say, obligate, meaning trying to hold yourself liable to man's verification. So when you say in God we trust, according to your currency, according to your doctrine, according to your actual composition of this country, what are you really saying? Do we trust in man's way of doing things? Obviously, many of you have. Your religion, your beliefs, your concepts, even your ideology of what the higher realities are on the face of this earth are all contrived by man. Most of y'all say, oh, I'll die for Jesus. It was a system devised by a man. Period. Your institutions, your beliefs, everything. And I know this might be a hard pill for you to swallow. And the truth is. But it's all according to a man's design. Let's go further. Sovereign citizens, indicators as written. Signatures and markings, all lower or uppercase, all rights reserved. Unusual use of colons, use of brackets, last name L or B, separate first and last name, zip codes, unnecessary notary seals, as often commonly known as flesh and blood. Also known, written in red ink, additional red fingerprint, personal or postal stamp, also known as under duress, which is called the acceptance of value process, but they wish to demonize it because a lot of y'all are really ignorant. Paper terrorism, this is what their definition is. It's the use of bogus legal documents and filings or the misuse of legitimate documents to intimidate, harass, threaten, or retaliate against public officials, law enforcement officers, or private citizens, including bogus liens, frivolous lawsuits, and involuntary bankruptcy filings, which in and of itself only comes as a result of someone commercially wronging you. But we'll get there later on in the series. This is just what they publish in their documentation. There's always a one-sided approach to try to vilify individuals who basically assert their common rights. Sovereign citizens. It always expounds upon the sovereign citizen. It never expounds upon those people who are basically indigenous or aboriginal. But we'll just let them go ahead and believe what they want because they're going to do it anyway, because they're going to try to lump you into a whole group of people anyway. Revoke adhesion contracts such as driver's license underneath the guise of freedom to travel. vehicle titles, vehicle registration, business licenses, incorporation papers, yada, yada, yada. They're demonizing something that they basically prescribe in their law, but because you know how to use it properly, they're trying to make it seem like you're doing something wrong when you're not. You're just making them responsible. Sovereign citizens, again, indicators, DMV, documents, fraudulent vehicle registrations, driver's licenses, birth certificates, insurance cards, passports, identification cards. First off, let's get this straight. How in the world can you falsify a birth certificate if you didn't even make it yourself? How can you falsify a vehicle registration when it had to have been registered by the state? I can't falsify it. I'm not in charge of the issuing authority. How can you falsify an insurance card when the insurance entity had to basically say that you were okayed or non-permissibly access allowed to this actual insurance? And identification cards, which in and of itself, if we even evidenced it by legal theory, that your straw man and your identification card are not one and the same. What's wrong with these people? Oh, I know what's wrong. They're trying to keep the sheep in the pen because they know that by their observation of how they view it, the government wants to keep its slaves, yes, law enforcement, it wants to keep its slaves in check, not the citizenry. Sovereign citizen indicators such as silver specie, liberty currency, and so forth. No. Anyone that basically possesses anything of the like is a person who is totally misinformed in regards to how it's supposed to be used or how it's supposed to be viewed as far as lawful currency. That's not the case. Now, this is what they say to their interaction in regards to you. They say, do, smile, be patient, listen, be attentive, non-judgmental, and show interest. Because they're basically trying to make it seem like they're trying to okay with you or side with you in order for you to not make it seem like you're basically trying to give some sort of indication that you're basically defending your natural right. But then it says mirror. This is what they do. It says mirror. Show empathy by using some of their terms or gestures, but do not overdo it. So they're pretending to be your friend. And this is the reason why I say on my channel, when it comes to a lot of people, stop acting like you my motherfucking friend, because I already know who you are. Your gestures, your innuendos, your terminology, your definitions, how you actually precisely try to note yourself to what I'm saying, you're not going to figure it out. It's not that easy. But this is what they try to do for y'all, because they know that they know something and they've been trained in a specific manner that you haven't been aware of, and now I'm making it very aware. Here's another thing. Be calming. Speak a little more quietly and slow than that. Because you know how most cops run up on you. They say, put your hands up, get the fucking hands against the button. It's always cursing. It's always aggressiveness. Majority of police in the United States actually do not subject themselves to random drug screening. A lot of cops y'all really deal with in the face of this motherfucking goddamn space we call Earth. They're actually underneath the influence of steroids. Will they ever be subject to certain drug tests? No. Avoid missteps. Do not appear unfriendly or impatient. This is what they also instruct law enforcement to do. Do not challenge their documents or beliefs. Refer to their documents as fraudulent. They can't tell you it's not fraudulent. Give your full name or other personal information. And this is a do not. Let's go further. Sovereign citizens reporting. Document the interaction. Contact supervisor. Regularly check your credit history. If you are in fear of harm or to yourself or others, notify police. How in the world can you be in harm or in fear of your safety and notify police if you are law enforcement? That's a misnomer, but that'll go right over a lot of the freaking heads straight up. Selective government authority processes. Use administrative processes, which are basically going to be bona fide or accredited by their own entities. Whatever best serves their beliefs or purposes and range from peaceful nuisance to violent. They often try to make it seem like sovereigns are violent. That's not the case. That's totally not the case. And this says no. Possessing or expressing sovereign citizen ideology is protected by the First Amendment and alone does not constitute illegal activity. But you just detail a whole specificity of what you otherwise deem as illegal. But this is how they basically instruct their law enforcement officers to look at you. Now, again, this is the Sovereign Citizens Awareness Training. You can find it online by a PDF. But everything in it is false. Now, I know a lot of agents might disagree because obviously there is no such thing as a sovereign. There is no such thing really as a citizen. You only have sovereigns. You only have people who are only liable if they harm a person or their property. If you don't harm a person or their property, you cannot be held legally liable. If you have a license, fine. But your objective when you're using the license is to basically say, I'm not going to be held liable for usage of it. No one's saying that you don't have to have a license. That's the people who make these cards, and that's the reason why it gives their argument credibility, because they want to absolve themselves of the liability that they didn't discharge by the misuse of it. So if you have a suspended license, please stop using that fucking identity card to try to make it seem like you have a right to travel. Deal with your legal burden first, and then you can proceed to travel freely, but make sure you're not liable for the misuse of the license. I don't need to say that again. Period. They're making you out to be the bad guy, but you're actually being condemned by something that basically is in of itself a pirating and alien force to try to govern and control you. To control you to the utmost. Now, when it comes down to the infringement of personal right, then there's a problem. Now, when you deal with anything in the public commercial venue, that's totally something different. But then they want to try to vilify that. They don't vilify what they should, nor do they expose you to the actual essence of what this society really is about. They want to make themselves seem right at every angle. They are correct, they are true, they are certain, and you live underneath the guise of the deceiver. It's to the point where they're putting publications out here like this for these nitwits to basically try to tell you that you can't assert this right because obviously your beliefs and your particular upstanding is false. Then guess what? That is when you actually realize that you live underneath a system of tyranny. And they don't have a problem stealing from you because they do it every day, whether by contract or by implied consent, it doesn't matter, or even by silence. But when you start to come to the realization, this is the stuff they put out there to basically make it seem like you're wrong. You're not. Y'all stay tuned for part 2. Here we go with the discharge to get these motherfucking evil corporate bitches off your back. Agents, do not contact me. I do not consent nor do I oblige whatsoever. It is what it is. Straight. But this is the truth. We'll go further as we proceed later on in the series. But like I said, you just marinate on that for a little minute. Y'all go ahead and see that this is the stuff that they actually train their law enforcement and police divisions to actually notice, basically, to basically take shit from you. Straight. Now, anyone that disagrees, it is what it is. Anyone that so-called favors law enforcement, hey, cut my video off and do not pay attention to anything I said. But this is a publication that's put online. This is not my conjecture, nor is it something that I made up on my own. You might not like it, but so what? Peace, light, and love to y'all. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to take it a little bit further. All services, consultations, whatever the case may be, is by case basis, based upon individual preferences and availability. Other than that, hire a lawyer. Take care.